Okay, thanks, Alex. So yeah, we're here to talk through our journey from Tableau to Power BI. Our journey is still a journey. A little bit about ourselves to get started. So I'm Chris Elton. I'm the visualization manager at Pets at Home. I've been with the business since September last year, and was brought in to help roll out Power BI. Previously have worked in roles within healthcare, focusing on tool migrations, things from SSRS to Click to Power BI, SSRS to Power BI, and have come to kind of focus on the customer experience, how we're focusing on the end user, and kind of rolling out an enterprise scale Power BI function.
Great, and I'm Brook. I've been with Pets for about 18 months. I've been coming to these user groups since the days back at the Anthony Burgess building, for those that remember. I've been, as I say, with Pets for 18 months. Prior to that, got a bit of experience in housing, and before that was insurance and stuff. Historically, I've come from a business analyst background, moved into data, hybrid BA role about 10 years ago. And yeah, just really enjoy it from first time finding a pivot table and a VLOOKUP, and then the journey just went from there. So quick one on Pets. I'm sure most of you heard of Pets at Home. We've recently had a rebrand, new logos and stuff. So quite often we just say Pets now instead of Pets at Home. Just some top level numbers there, which you can get off our website anyway. We've got 1.4 billion turnover, 450 stores nationwide. Most of those got veterinary services alongside. We've also got standalone veterinary services. We've got groom rooms in a good chunk of those stores as well. And alongside that, we've got our e-commerce platform and a VIP membership scheme, which offers subscriptions, and those subscriptions cross between our vets platform and our retail platform. So it's a pretty big business. One of the key reasons to bringing those numbers up is to demonstrate how much volume of data we're looking at. Our transactional data is massive. So we're on the Google platform, which eats it up for breakfast, no problem at all. So yeah, that's who we are. Just a brief one on the complexity of our business model. Our vets and our retail and our e-com all currently, we're just migrating into a single platform, but they're all sort of standalone disparate sources. One of the challenges for our team is actually working out, matching those customers together, matching their pets together. And yeah, it's a good space. So the team, just give you a quick overview. So like I say, we're a big business. We've got a big data team. I feel like a weatherman here, but going from left across, we've got 12 people in our engineering team. They're bloody brilliant. They not only deal with getting the ingest of data into our data lake, they also deal with all the boring bit on the config of our deployment platforms, of all of the stuff that I'm really not interested in. They do a great job. Similar, we've got a 12-man team in analytics engineers. That's where I sit. So we're taking that data from the data lake, we're turning that into our facts and dimensions, and then serving that up to the business for our data science guys to use, our insights guys to use, and our data viz team. So we're big. Have we got talk people in here tonight? No. All right, so good. What I missed off this slide was Sarah Hyam, who's our data governance lead. She's joined the business about the same time as me. We're really hammering the data governance at the moment, data quality. We've just got Atlan in place as well, which is going to do a full data lineage through all of our systems and bring that together. So it's a smaller team of 2 or 3 people, equally as important. And when she said that her friends from Talk were in, I thought I best cover the facts, but I didn't put her on the slide. Sorry, just a little bit on the tooling we're using as well. Google Cloud Platform is where our data warehouse is, our data lake. We're using DBT for doing our transformation stuff. We've been about 18 months using DBT. Really good tool. Once it's configured properly, it means that we can seamlessly move across from our test environment, our local environments, through test, through UAT, through to prod. It's a fantastic tool. We've got Airflow for our orchestration, GitHub, and currently we're also using Bitbucket for Git as well. Mainly for that source control. It's back end, it's the engineers and the analytics platform. We kind of got a vision and we're on a journey to get the people in, the data scientists and stuff using it. I don't know if you know data scientists. After we get everything nice and neat and clean, they just go all crazy with it. So they're really not keen on having an organized, structured source control environment. Well, that's the tooling we're using at the moment.
So our Tableau position, it's currently still in use. We are in that migration stage now, but the scale of Tableau, as you can see there, just some top level figures. We're over 300 reports, 38 creator licenses, which obviously comes at a cost. If anyone's aware of that, the cost associated to that, and over 1,000 viewers in the business of those Tableau reports. Tableau started in the business kind of around 4 years ago, and that started as an MI tool, kind of evolved into, got traction, went to the next level down, and then from there it kind of has gone to a full retail KPI reporting level. So it's a very low level of granularity that we're reporting at. It's in every store. So stores use this as their platform to get their KPI information. And it's used across the teams that we've just seen on the previous slide. So it's across data science, insights, and also across the data viz team, you should expect, operating across 2 environments as a dev and a prod environment.
So yeah, so the current environment, as I say, we're on Tableau. I joined the business 18 months ago. We've got GCP and storage is cheap. So I've come from a background of an on-premise data warehouse where we really had to be conscious about keeping our data warehouse tight. The data warehouse toolkit came in. It was integer keys all over the place. Our date integer keys. We had to keep a really tight fact dimensional model. You come into the Google platform and suddenly it's not really that much of an issue. So our fact tables are loaded with what would have been dimensional attributes such as an order type. I've got 1 billion transactions and each one has got a text order type of check or PayPal or direct debit because there's not a requirement to strip it out. So it means that we've lent ourselves to having really wide fact tables, not a requirement to dimensionalize it. On top of that, as we came in 4 years ago with Tableau, we were still building our latest version of the data warehouse, and it wasn't at a very mature level at that point. So the guys that moved to Tableau were still tapping into the old data sets that they used to use. They didn't really get that mentality of scalable data models. And by the time the data warehouse was mature enough, that was kind of the go-to place. So it was all about sort of flat data sets, serving a single purpose, one data model, one report, and the environment's been built out from that. So those, how many reports was it?
310?
310 reports, each have got a standalone model, and each one of those models, well, we've built a data warehouse and we've done it all nice. There's an extra layer where they've essentially run store procedures, schedule queries in GCP, and they've configured it all to make it a flat table for them to then load into Tableau. So none of it's particularly scalable. All of it's quite heavily aggregated, so you can't dive into that data. It answers a single question, and therefore not fit for any self-service and not fit for taking that single model, moving it on. So yeah, the data warehouse toolkit was thrown away. I remember when I started, I thought, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I miss my star schema. I like my star schema. I like the way it's organized. Am I old fashioned? Do I need to change my ways? But what we'll see once we move into a Power BI environment, which is connected to GCP, you've got to ingest that data on a daily basis, which means that you can't have these big, long text fields. You've got to get back down to that star schema. And I've found myself in my happy place again. Back to the old-fashioned way of working.
So when it came to understanding how we can go forward as a business, to get to the goal of self-service. It was clear that it needed to, whichever tool was chosen, the working GCP to go to the standard, nice, clean star schema needed to happen regardless of tool. So when deciding on tools, it came down to kind of three main areas. One being cost, two being enabling the distributed analysts, and three being how easy is it to implement. Tableau was obviously in place, so it was in the conversation versus Power BI. So what we've kind of worked through and kind of trying to demonstrate is kind of where as a business they got to here with this decision. So Tableau was seen as a fairly technical tool and was limited knowledge in the business and also a finite resource and knowledge externally, versus the Power BI side, which was a Microsoft tool that had Excel users enabled and familiar. It seemed to be fairly easy to use and a nice front end. And also the fact that it's a growing community that people can get support from things such as Microsoft Learn, YouTube, any other forums. So it's all available. Cost itself, as you've seen those figures there previously with the number of users we've got, that was growing and constantly growing. And associated to paying for a user license got us to a position where our store KPI, for example, it's in every store. So that's licensed for every store.
How many stores, Chris?
450-ish. So when you're thinking around that licensing, it was kind of, well, we're paying for that, and how else can we do that? And that's where the premium capacity came in, paired with the free licensing. So ultimately, we're cutting that straight down. We're also at a point of,
sorry, just to clarify that point, because our 365 licensing is massive, because we've got that many employees, the upgrade to getting premium capacity as standard was almost irrelevant as a cost thing, whereas our Tableau costs definitely considerable.
Yeah, so with the Microsoft licensing that we've got and the other tooling that we've got in place, it seemed logical to go via the route with the Pro license now being part of the E5 license, so we can enable that function and our support office staff have a license and can get going, but we can also utilize the free licenses when we want to go onto the premium content, so that we can start enabling the users that are only needing that viewer access to get to a report. The training, and
I was going to say, it's probably worth mentioning that neither of us are particular Tableau users. So I had to go, 7 or 8 years ago, when I was doing my own decision whether it was Tableau, Power BI, Click, went down the Power BI route. The decision to move to Power BI was before either of us really got involved in the project. So we can't talk necessarily about how much easier Power BI is than Tableau, but I have been using Tableau a bit over the last 6 months, going into some existing reports and stuff, trying to make some amendments, and it's a much more complex environment than Power BI. We've got a young man in our team we're trying to encourage everyone to start doing a bit of self-serve, using Power BI and not just tapping into SQL and doing stuff. And he's whipped up a dashboard in Power BI desktop, connected to an existing model in no time flat. Now, admittedly, very bright, but it took him no time. It took him no training. You could just go straight into Power BI. It's that easy to get into. Some of you might say that Tableau is the same if you give it time. I haven't. So just so you're aware.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this came from. It's a platform to enable self-service, but thinking who is actually going to self-serve. It's not someone that's probably going to be a technical person with an IT background. It's going to be someone that uses Excel, and that's maybe a limit for them, or they're comfortable in that. So it's something that's familiar, and that's where we found that Power BI just lends itself to that, and the platform itself is built for that. So where to start? The foundational governance is key for a Power BI rollout, especially on the scale that we're looking to do it on. And as part of this, it was me coming in September. It was very much, I don't know the business. I need to learn the business, and then we need to think about how we're going to roll this out. And it was the support from other people around me to say, this area of the business likes to do it this way and that. that way, and then learning that then gets you to a position to understand how the business operates and what fits that, because one size doesn't fit all. And we also utilize the engagement with Microsoft that we will come on to in a later slide, but was key for us on elements that we seen as underpinning as these 6 elements. So licensing was one. So we've touched on it with premium capacity and free license, as well as looking at the fact of we have E5 licenses, therefore we have Pro available. How are we going to enable that? So are all of the licenses with the right people? Do we have rules in place to allocate them? The next was workspaces, and this was kind of where we spent a lot of time planning how that works. Because of the scale of the business and how it's distributed, as well as how we as a function operate and engage with the business, is that we operate in a squad-based entity and we work with domains. So when we're publishing elements out from anywhere within the data function, it's often focused from a squad into a domain. So it seemed logical that whilst other tools were in that position of working in domain-based and we operated in a domain-based, we've also deployed our workspaces domain-based. So that would be something like retail has their own domain-based. The vision then from there is that if we operate towards a domain having a single semantic model, by default, we start to move towards self-service because they have ownership of their own semantic model that they can engage with, they understand, they're creating the definitions, and then their users can connect to that to be able to self-serve. We did also work through a couple of ways probably, and Microsoft had helped us along the way of deciding of where to publish our semantic models. So we have gone with a semantic model workspace, so where we house all of our semantic models in a central place to keep that governance and that control. And then we connect via thin reports into those from the domain-based workspaces. So it seems at this stage to fit with our business model and how we're going to operate from a technical team into the business. There's always going to be certain scenarios where it may not work, but right now we think it's the best way that we can move forward, and it seems to be working with where we're at. Standards is another key one. So how do we get distributed analysts long-term in the business operating in the same way to create good-looking reports, to operate, to know how to use our models, understand what we've done? So we've gone down the route of documenting these so that people can, and it's in a language that people can understand it. But this goes, initially was measures. So measures is where we've probably come to the point of how do we standardize measures, and things just from a basic point of having a measure table that houses just measures and not putting them within other tables. But also the fact of we're needing to get across the fact that, back to Brook's earlier point of the GCP world is aggregating them into a table for a specific need for Tableau. All of the time intelligence is done at that level. And we operate from a fiscal calendar with 13 periods. So if you take out of action in your Dax a lot of the built-in time functionality, you're then at a complicated point of how do we do time intelligence as a business in a consistent way, but in an easy way, so that everyone in the team is operating from the same position. We are still in that process. We think we've got away and we're operating with it, but time will tell, I think, and we're looking to ever improve that. Within the standards, probably the biggest success that we've had so far is on the theme. I was testing a number of sites, subscription, small fees to see if it worked, finding limitations, and eventually came across a single one that seemed to do it all. It's themes.pbix by point. This is just a screen grab that we've took from the site. But you'll see in the top corner, you can work through things, you can download it. When you want to make a change, you can re-upload it. You can make a change to whatever setting you want, re-download it, and you're good to go again. But down the left side is every visualization in Power BI that exists. And this on screen is just the data label section. So we've got to a point of a JSON file that's a theme. It's got a custom palette in. We've also brought the corporate fonts in, which, as you're probably aware, in Power BI, you've got a list that Microsoft give you and you can't do anything else. We can override in here. We can push it in and it accepts it if you've got your font installed. Granted, if you make a little tweak and go back to din, you can't go back to your font because it's not in the list. But from the theme, it works. And with this, we're at just over 15,000 lines of JSON code for our theme, but we've covered every visualization aspect in that, so that all as our end user has to do, or our central team, is install the theme, click a visual, it's there, it's got our fonts, it's got a consistent layout, it has everything in one spot, and they can just literally drag and drop their data points on, and then pretty much good to go. So this has been really useful. I think it was probably the 5th or 6th that I got to, and we're at a point where our distributed users are really liking the fact that they can go quick. A long time and a lot of downloads, but once you're in a flow, once you've put your custom palette in, when you're going through the visuals, your drop down's got those colors there, so you're not kind of pasting hash numbers in and whatnot to get your colors. There is a lot of trial and error, but once you get to the point of working through it, we're in version 3.1 now that we're going through, but it seems to be quite successful, and we've got our insights team using it, and they were under the impression they'd have to load the colors in every time or do an out-the-box theme from Power BI. But actually where they're at is this cuts a lot. The time to analysis and result is going to be a lot quicker for not just ourselves, but also for distributed users.
Just to back that up a little bit, so I've come from a background of being full life cycle, doing the extraction through to delivering in Power BI. My current role is more in the middle, because I wasn't that fussed about getting it looking pretty at the end. I can apply this theme and can very quickly deliver something which is looking like the business wants it to look. And it's not my forte, but we've got the theme, we've got some standard stuff going on, we're going to keep it consistent, and very easy even for me to get something to look pretty and accepted, and then usable by those. We've got reports everyone's familiar with. They're familiar with the stuff that we're putting out there. They've got they all tell a similar story and a similar navigation. So it's worth putting those hours in at the front, because it just loads and it's there. And that includes we've got banners and logos. They all come through. I'm stealing your.
He's stealing my thunder. It's okay. You're right.
Have it back.
So yeah, as Brook was saying, our document of our user guide is 1.5 pages, which when you think about things isn't actually that much. All as we're saying is here's how to install it into a new dashboard, here's how to install it into one you've already built, and here's a few gotchas and alignments. So it's things like here's how to put your title on and the position to put it. So all titles are in the same position. We've put an image as the background, and all as the background shows is our top banner with a Pets logo, space for a title, and below it we've got a single segment where we're telling the users this is where you put slicers. So that whenever a user goes into any report, whoever's built it, the slicers are in the same position and everyone knows where to get their slicers. So this is the route that we've took with that. And simple principle that we've added to that is use containers to house your visuals to break your page up. We found that's the easiest way to get someone that doesn't know how to lay a dashboard out, and also way similar to us. Use containers, think what's going where, then put it on top, and everything looks as if it's come from the central team, pretty much. But yeah, that's me on standards and themes.
Oh, do my bit.
Do your 3.
I've done yours already. So yeah, from environment. So again, I've got multiple roles. I'm in my data platform, and we've got quite a rigorous deployment pipeline, which I'll go into more detail. But we've got a development space. We've got a sandbox, development, UAT, test, prod. Lots of environments to work in. Too many and more than we need for a Power BI deployment. So we've stripped that down, and in Power BI service, using the deployment pipeline process, we've just gone for a dev and a prod. Keep it simple. So Chris has already talked about the domain-based workspaces, which means we'll end up with about 15 or 16 workspaces-ish. Each of those, which are agreed on premium capacity, we'll have that dev and prod, with the intention that you've just got a bit of UAT engagement in that dev space, and then we're using that pipeline to deploy to prod. The pipelines and source control, I've got a slide, I think, which I'll go into more detail on that one. And with regards to access, report access, dashboard or app access we're using the audiences. Again, last time I was looking at Power BI, audiences weren't on the app. Really powerful way to put all of your domain-based reports in one spot, and then you can cherry pick who the audiences are going to be. We're controlling that through AD groups or security groups. There's still a little bit of not friction, decision to be made as to who's going to control the adding and subtracting of people from those groups. Pretty sure it's not going to be us, and that will become an IT function via the owner, the business owner of the app. So if somebody new wants to go onto that app, they'll go to the owner of the app, who is a business person, not one of us, and say, "I want access, mate." And then it will go to IT, add to an AD group. Those AD groups need to be configured that you've added that audience to the semantic model, and you've added the audience to the app. So there's a double thing we need to do early doors when we're setting this stuff up. But we're just working through that at the moment. We're just setting those AD groups up. What we've realized is that we'll have an AD group for each potential variant audience within the app. There'll also be builder groups required for each of these workspaces, because you've got some people who will be building and some who will just be reading. And then we got this other question about the analyzing Excel stuff that we feels like it's going to be a losing battle, but we'll see where we get to. The other thing, I guess, around access, I don't think we got it in the slides particularly, but one of the challenge, I'll come up in challenges. I'll park that one.
So on the previous slide, we'd mentioned the Microsoft engagement. So I thought it was a good thing to call out here. We've utilised the enhanced designated engineer hours that's part of our agreement with the Microsoft Cloud Solution Architects. So what that's enabled us to do is kind of pick the topics that we want to quiz them about, ask the questions that, whilst we can Google it, we're limited to that, whatever is returned. But we'll be using these sessions to kind of run through what is best practice for something of our business scale. And then we were assessing what the suitability is. Is it scalable? Where are we on the maturity curve? Are we at a level playing field, or are we out of kilter before we even start? And then go back around and validate it with Microsoft and ask those questions. We found them useful. Where we got to was, I think, asking the certain questions at an enterprise level of, we want to know what's best practice at this scale. At times seemed to be limited knowledge, but what was really useful was that was taken away, found the right person, the right resource, came back around, and we had brilliant sessions that helped us get to where we're at now, and with all those governance parts to get rolled out. So they were really useful for us, just to have a soundboard that weren't ourselves sat in a room or on a call, just bounding ideas between us.
If anyone gets to that point where you get that enhanced designated engineer, you have got a great resource at the front. But if you don't feel they're answering the questions, you just need to chip in, and they will find you someone. And some of the guys there, Sasha, there's a chap who, he comes on and he knows everything about that enterprise scale stuff. We were talking about loading. There was anyone here for the Very talk a few months ago? They were similar challenges for their data lab, I think they called it. Masses of data that needed to get in. We were in a similar position with our transactions, and we said, I can't get it. I just can't squeeze it all down the pipeline. I can get my incremental stuff. How am I going to get my first load in? And just gave loads of advice on how to tweak that optimization, telling us what to ignore, and sort of challenging us on, why are you doing that? Do you need that in this model? So really good resource. And they also helped us with our deployment patterns. So deployment patterns, we spoke to them about what we thought we wanted. We're obviously a large business. You've seen the size of our teams. There's a lot of us in there. We did have an idea, and we said, we think this is what we want to do. We think we want the semantic models in their own workspace. We think we want somebody building the semantic models here And then I think we want separate people building the report outputs. Does that sound okay? And they went through about 6 or 7 deployment patterns and said, well, this one looks about right. So we've looked at this and said, that is exactly what we're talking about. So on the slide, you can see there that, again, it's all about roles. So you might have one person doing many roles. At the moment, we do, and I've got a lot of hats on at the moment, which means that when you get to the deployment pipelines and stuff, it feels a bit overwhelming. But this is assuming that you've already got your facts and dimensions delivered from your analytics engineers. Is that what we're called now? From our from the analytics engineer. So I've given myself a good data model, and then I'm going back in then, and I'm going to build my semantic model, which is connecting all those pieces together. Should be easy. Maybe doing a bit of the optimization to make sure it's a type star schema, building in that standard measures that have come from our requirements for the model. So whether it's, I don't know, sales, returns, whatever, there's some standard measures that we're building in there. And we think, and we're still sort of toying with where the hat gets handed over, probably some of that standard time intelligence stuff going in there, and then optimizing it as well. So we've got quite a few models. We've worked on the stock analysis recently, and that involves taking the snapshot of products by store, by day. Well, they've got 7,000 products, 8,000 products, 450 stores every single day. That it just gets ridiculous really quick. And when you then say, no, I want to know what the average is, you start getting these performance issues. So again, it's the role of the content creator, me, to make sure that that's all optimized. We'll talk about a bit about some of the tooling, but how many people are using premium and premium licensing? Great. So you've got XMLA endpoints open using ALM toolkit at all. The ALM toolkit is a fantastic tool to use, especially when you've got a large model, because you can build your desktop model, you're bringing back 2 weeks worth of data, and you're testing your DAX, and it all works great. You publish it, you wait for it to chug to load your nearly billion rows, you test it, and it's really sluggish. But you don't want to be doing, how do you rinse through that cycle? So using ALM toolkit, you can connect to the semantic modeling service, make some changes to the DAX, open ALM toolkit, do a compare, and say, oh, you've updated these measures, fire it across, and then go and test it again. So you can just push those changes without pushing the data. So if you've got those XMLA endpoints open, you've got your premium capacity, it's a really good tool. There will be other tools on the market, but for sure, it's the one that we found really helpful. So I'm doing the optimization there, probably running out of time, but I think we're okay. We published that data set. We'll go through the approval processes of that later. It goes into our data set hub, where all of our sort of approved models will be. We will come back in about a year's time and talk again about how successful all of this has been. We've already got some stuff which is quick win stuff, reactive data models, which we're not putting in this space. Any model that lands in our semantic model space is essentially ready to be endorsed. The stuff that we're doing outside of that in the domains is a little bit cowboy and may potentially come out within, in time. So we've got our data set hub. We published that. Hurrah. There's some basic, we proved the concept that we can answer the questions for the business. There'll be a few standard visuals in there. Then it goes to Chris's team, who pick that up in the domain space. They work through it there. They will add some report level DAX. So stuff that supports the report in the thin report. If some of that is identified as this is reusable, it comes back round through a cycle, it goes to me, and I put it into the semantic model. But otherwise, if it's just for that specific report, you've got parameters to help them load a particular page, for example, that stays put, not my responsibility. If it's reusable, it comes back round. And then from there, that's the first point. So the data viz team, they're going to go out and they're pushing the reports based on the semantic model. And it's at that point that our, what they called, distributed analysts. Distributed analysts. So those analysts that aren't reporting into the wider analytics team, they're reporting into the domain managers, and they're going in and they're just doing stuff. So they are now connecting to these semantic models, which are endorsed, and they're building stuff, as opposed to grabbing some stuff straight out of the Google data warehouse, doing some stuff, running up some crazy costs in GCP, and then having no validation behind it. The intention is they're building from that model. So it's the dream, basically. We're early on in the dream. The dream is still alive, and that's where we're up to. So that's the pattern that we stuck with. There are other ones, and I was going to put, we didn't put the hyperlink on here. Google patterns, you'll find that online, and it's worth finding the right one for you and your team. On with me. So deployment pipelines and source control. Like I said, I'm wearing a lot of hats at the moment, so I'm going through lots of approval steps. So our GCP data platform, that's really mature. We've got a data engineering team who've configured our Bitbucket. We will be moving to GitHub soon on it, but they've done all the bit that definitely doesn't interest me. And what it means is that we go through, we do our DBT development locally, we test locally in our sandbox, and then we push it to GitHub, and it requires 2 approvals before it gets into the test environment. So that's coming back to me as a senior, plus another senior, to review the code and say, yeah, I understand that. I understand the need. I understand that it's not going to cost a load of money, because I don't know if many of you are on GCP, but you get charged a processing cost. So those expensive queries are really actually expensive queries. It's coming out your pocket. So they will provide evidence that it's not going to be expensive, or the business case as to why they're doing an expensive query. Goes through 2 approval steps in Bitbucket. They then have to do additional testing in the test and UAT environments, say, look, the numbers are right compared to what the old numbers were, at which point it gets another 2 approvals before it goes through. So that's quite a few steps, but we're a big business and we can't get it wrong. In an ideal world, you've been all the way, so the dream, you've gone all the way through that first process before you start looking at Power BI. So we'll stick with the dream for now. You get into Power BI, we can't have that many steps. Are we all aware that you can use Git now with Power BI? You save your files as a BPIM, which means that you can push them up to Git without any problems. Is anyone using it? We've gone in, it works. One of the problems when you're in DBT and you're doing SQL files and stuff, and you change branch on your source control, the stuff that you were working on the other branch it disappears. It's fine, it's great. You're working on your branch and that's all you see. Because your Power BI files are maybe a little bit heavier, it doesn't remove them necessarily, and they just kind of float around a little bit. It's a little bit clunky, to be honest. However, it does work. We are now deploying our changes. We're able to, now it's in source control. You can go back and say that's wrong. You can, with some recent updates to the BPIM file structure, you can actually fairly easily see the DAX that's been changed. So if somebody's changed a couple of measures in a model and it goes to this approval spot, you can see what's been changed. And then the evidence is a little bit lighter. A couple of screenshots say, looks all right, looks good. But we've got a single approval step. Because we're not on Azure DevOps yet, this is something we want to do. We've not got that seamless push into our Power BI service. So we're going for the approval. It gets approved and merged in Git. Somebody's then manually pushing that file like we're used to, published from Power BI desktop up to service. And then we've got that's into the dev environment. It then gets pushed through an approval, Chris, to say, I'm happy for that to go to prod. And then once it's in prod, Then you've got to update the app still as well. So then you've got to go and republish the app, make sure your audiences are there. If it's a semantic model and it's a new semantic model, you've got to make sure you set the refreshers. That's all manual at the moment. And we've not got that API stuff worked out. We want our engineering team, because they're good at that stuff, to go in and do all of that for us. We've asked for some support from Microsoft on how do we do this? I don't want my refreshers set up against a personal account. I said, oh, we'll use a service account. Oh, great. Okay, we'll do that then. I don't want to give anyone the password for the service account. Oh, we'll come back to you. Like, so that will no doubt be going to Sasha to come back and tell us what and how that's going to be done. So there's a couple of gaps there. It's definitely a bit choppy. I have got all the hats on at the moment. I'm doing all the approval steps, potentially. I'm
approving everything.
Proving everything. 10 minutes, thank you. Once you've sort of separated those roles out, you've got your platform work being done in the platform. You've got your Power BI work being done in Power BI service. It might get a bit easier, but I won't say it's the smoothest process. And when we come back, I think we'll have smoothed out some creases. The other challenge that we've got, apart from the number of slides we've got to get through, is it's a dream that your data model is all ready for you by the time that you model it in Power BI. So what we found is whoever's doing the modeling in Power BI, me at the moment, is you're writing SQL scripts, you're putting it into the Power BI desktop, you're doing it, you're testing it, you're working it, you go, ooh, sweet, that all works. Then I'm going back into GCP, I'm turning that into transformed data, scheduled models, data tables, and pushing it through that way. So it works, it's effective, but the dream is pissing in the wind, to be honest. They're going to be working next to each other.
In the interest of time, I will keep this one short. This is around our pilot. So we've had a pilot in the business to everything that we've just talked through. At that point, it was conceptual. We'd got it up and running, but did it work when we actually need it to work? And so what we've done is we had a little bit of a scope that was wisely selected around things such as it needs to have some importance to the business. Otherwise, why are we doing it? Is it actually achievable? Do we have the correct variety of work in there? So can we test all of the elements that we've just been through? Have we got the right type of stakeholder so that we can go to them and say, we're going to try it out. It might not work. Are you okay with it? But you might get value at the end of it, but we will get there. So that's where we got to. But we also managed to get some exposure in the business via an end-to-end automation of a manual Excel file was what we chose to work through. And we've landed something where source control, pipelines, semantic model, thin reports, app, audiences, done. There's my slide done at rapid speed. I don't really want to go too quick over this one because this is key for landing a rollout, I think, is the communication and the engagement. We're going with the tagline of it's not just a tool change, it's a culture change as well.
Are you sure?
I am sure. And as part of that, because where we're at right now is the Tableau kind of world is that MI world, and we need to get to that self-serve. But how people engage with data, engage with the tool is where it's changing. So we engage with IT early to kind of make sure that we got the routes to get the support with the wider Microsoft thing. So can we get the licensing set up? Have we got a route for the groups? Are we okay doing what we've got? Where's our freedom? Where's the tape? So that was early on in that kind of rollout. The communication to the business and stakeholders is key, but so is the timing. Engage with them too early, they're knocking at the door. Engage with them too late, they've already built stuff and you're miles behind. So getting that timing is key and making sure that it's at the right level. So we identified the comms platforms that we can utilize to reach the audiences and plan the messaging well. So we've used an internal intranet to kind of say, hey guys, yeah, we have got Power BI. We've been in a pilot. Here's what we've achieved and here's what's coming next. And that focus is that Tableau migration at a domain level to Power BI. And we're going to be engaging domain by domain, but we'll keep circling back around and telling you what we've achieved every time we achieve something. It's also key, whilst it is the timing of it, it's also to highlight the pace that we go. If we try and go too fast, you'll be back around in the same position in 6 months' time. If you try and go too slow, you're not going to land anything, and you're going to be renewing in your current tool that you've got again, which isn't happening. As I'm sure someone in the room is very keen that it's not going to happen. That migration process is what we've come up with of how we get from Tableau to Power BI and how we try and orchestrate this to the business. So this is kind of the movement of the process broken down into these 5 stages. So there's the engagement part, which is where we're almost stating the goals and the scope. So we're not going to try and achieve everything with this and give you new functionality. The goal is Tableau to Power BI. And by the way that we're designing this, stepping into that analysis and planning of what data points do we need in the model, building the semantic model at a domain-based level and releasing it out, we get the self-serve point by default. But I often am at the position of saying, what is self-service? I personally would challenge someone and say, giving someone a report, they can engage with it, filter it, and find out an answer is a form of self-service. But also at the other end of the spectrum, you've got someone with a model that wants to go and engage with it, put DAX over it, build their own report. That's still self-service. So it's that maturity curve of how do we get there? And that's where the engagement part of what is the goal and what is the scope, and making sure you go through the analysis and planning and build the right content in the right ways that we've built the governance, gets us both ways. So we get Tableau to Power BI, but also we get self-service in a form, but we've got the foundations to get to that end goal of here's a model that you can go and put DAX over and build your own dashboard from this model that's endorsed and we're comfortable with it. We go through the content build, we release it out via the pipelines with the sign off, and we step through the testing and report validation, and then we step into how we can support and monitor the usage. So this is where we get to the point of we're not just landing something and leaving it there for years and years and it just works. We've got to be able to support them to move them on from their journey as well as ours, because we're moving around multiple domains, and the first domain is going to be sat waiting for you at this end. So we've got to figure out how we can continue to support here while still getting your end one through point 3 and stepping on their journey to get the whole business through.
What was the answer?
We're still there.
Okay.
So learning and community is another piece. So this is how we get that engagement and keep them going. So what we have worked on with this is we're working with building some training pathways. These link into, Brook mentioned earlier, data governance manager. So we're working through a wider program, but as part of that, Power BI is that. So how do we get people enabled in the business? And these pathways, we're looking at utilizing Microsoft Learn, because I think that wherever you go and training, courses, anything you look at on YouTube, you're always referenced to Microsoft Learn. So let's go there. So we're utilizing the Service Hub to be able to create our own custom pathways, at which point you can actually assign these into business users. So you can kind of send an email, it lands with them and say, you've got these 3 modules to learn Power BI to go to the service. As part of that, we've also designed 3 personas. So these personas are starting out with a business user. That's the lowest level in the business. The middle, which is a self-serve user, which is the spectrum on that is very big, and then a data professional. And from that, with the hope of these pathways, we can hoping to take someone from this business user and they can go on their journey to where they want to go and plateau, but they can keep going if they want via these pathways and continually learn. But what that enables us from a perspective to do is to be able to have that journey, but whilst we're saying to people, yeah, now you can start building your own reports and DAX, they're on that journey, and we understand where they're at in their learning. So we know that we can trust them to start getting involved with things, and they can start self-serving in a true way. We're also looking at the community. So that will be when we're starting to engage these domains, we're also then circling around and saying, hey, come to a user group like this. We're going to meet, talk through your issues, talk through what you're finding, what have you found that's good, what have you been working on, and that will start to support each other within the business, and we'll find out those key users that are really getting the benefit from Power BI in the business. Microsoft have also said that on our scale, we should be going down the Centre of Excellence route. So we're looking to start small. At the minute, I think the Centre of Excellence is me and Brook. And we're going to be looking to kind of give out those roles and responsibilities. So rather than wearing multiple hats, who's accountable for training pathways? Someone's got to be in that central team and someone's got to fly that flag. So that's the route that we're going with that centre of excellence. There's a lot of material online for centre of excellence and the roles, and you can start small and you can go very, very big. But we are going to look to grow that in the business when the community starts to grow. So this is our final slide of the evening, and this is our challenges, and this is a bit of a brainstorm, and we've added to this and took off this and everything over the last few days.
Yeah.
But this is kind of what's on our mind right now and what we're trying to do. You can go around these, but I think the main one from our point is, I personally think that Git and the deployment pipeline works, but it doesn't feel slick. And that's where we need to really start. How does it work on scale? How do we get it? How do we not be so hands-on? How do we automate some of that?
For me, from being at my end of the BI spectrum, more at the engineering side, is the stress testing of stuff. Anyone who came last month, and there was that great presentation on some scripting to go and stress test your visuals and having multiple users on at the same time. I'm like, oh, is that a problem? Is that a problem? I was like, oh no, I didn't. I assume now I'm paying for premium licensing. I'm assuming that is not an issue. It worries me now that it will be. Our 450 stores all log on at 9 o'clock and they want to check the KPIs from the previous day. Is that an issue? So there's that performance, but there's also the performance of our data warehouse is ready, whatever, 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I've got X number of semantic models that all want to be refreshed at the same time. Most of them are on incrementals where there's a lot of data in there, not all of them. What's it going to be like when we've got 30 semantic models all saying yes please at 6 o'clock in the morning? How's that going to look? So we haven't stress tested it. We've not really got the path for stress testing it. So that's definitely one of my main concerns. But where we are today, it's also absolutely that deployment pipeline doesn't feel as smooth as it could be. Power BI has said yes, you can source control it. I think Azure DevOps will be the answer. So when we come back, I think it's going to be Azure DevOps. Is anyone using Azure DevOps for their source control? Is it slick? Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thanks. See you next time. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.